Abidjan, the capital of the Ivory Coast, has a new commercial heart, all chrome and glass. But behind the modern facade lies the ghost of France's colonial days. The Ivory Coast used to be called French West Africa, and the country still retains a strong French influence. Once away from the city, however, with its beachside clubs, one meets the real Africa, tropical jungle and rainforest. And not for nothing was it known in days gone by as the white man's graveyard. Sadly, the once proud streets of French-style villas, which one could find from Saigon to South America at the height of her empire, have now fallen into decay and neglect. The country plays host during late October to the Ivory Coast Rally, an event dogged by controversy in the past and which for 1986 has been dropped from the World Championship Series. Regular competitors to the rally are Toyota, and their main challenge this year will come from Michel Mouton in an Audi Quattro, anxious to finish at least in the first three and therefore retain an A seeding for next season, and from local driver Ambrosino and Kenyan Mike Kirkland, who are entered in Nissan 240 RSs. Most teams complete last-minute preparation at their respective local dealerships in Abidjan, before heading north for the town of Yamoussoukro, in the heart of the country, where the rally will be based. Toyota put a lot of effort into this event. They know that endurance rallies like the Ivory Coast and Safari are best suited to the Toyota Celica, which is basically a strong, reliable car. Toyota are realistic enough to know that on the majority of World Championship rallies, they cannot compete on equal terms with the current breed of four-wheel drive rally cars. As mechanics sweat in the boiling heat to load the hundreds of tyres necessary for such a tough event, they know that all their efforts during the next few days will be concentrated on getting the two cars of Juha Kankkunen and Bjorn Valdegaard to the finish ahead of everybody else. Toyota were based at the Palm Beach Hotel, Abidjan, and it was from here that crews set off on the Tuesday morning for Yamoussoukro. The majority of service vehicles stayed behind in Abidjan, moving out to meet the rally as it headed back south on the first leg. Juha appears relaxed. After 10 days practicing, all he wants to do now is get started. Toyota are involved in a research program being carried out by Cologne University, both drivers being wired up in an effort to look at ways that fitness and stamina can be improved.
What is this for, Juha?
They want to do some measurement what is happening inside, temperatures, and if you have bad places or something, that are you scared or something like that? I don't know really. We will see.
The rally consists of 4 separate legs. The first from Yamoussoukro south towards Abidjan. Then the second leg heads northeast towards the border with Ghana, before looping back for a brief rest halt in Yamoussoukro. Total distance covered by then will be 1,500 kilometers. The third and fourth legs again radiate out from Yamoussoukro. The third heading right up into the north of the country near the border with Mali, and it is over 1,000 kilometers long. The fourth, and by far the hardest, heads south towards the coast at San Pedro, before turning inland and tackling the infamous Thai forest section, en route to the finish back in Yamoussoukro. In 4.5 days, the fortunate competitors to make it to the finish ramp will have covered over 4,000 kilometers of the toughest terrain in Africa. Masterminding the Toyota operation is Henry Lytton, whose service schedules are something of a legend, especially on African rallies. A vital part of those service arrangements are the team planes, used as an aerial communications base for Henry, who literally oversees the entire operation and moves his plays around like a giant game of chess.
It is on the exit of village Nati Mboro. Nati Mboro. In the 7 minutes, Ufa, in the 7 minutes. Taken with extreme caution. The second half, right-hand side. The Land Cruiser is parked beyond, the ropes are out to pull you through if necessary.
Another important aspect of rallying in this part of the world are the mud cars, specially equipped four-wheel drive vehicles that go ahead of the rally to sections which are known to be bad, just in case. We'll be driving one of these Land Cruisers, call sign Tango Mud 3, as we follow the fortunes of the Toyota team. The roads in Africa defy description at times. These are the equivalent of country roads in England. linking villages and towns, and are considered by the locals to be good. For the crew of Tango Mud 3, however, this is their first location, marked on the co-driver's notes as a possible trouble spot. Michel Mouton had got ahead of Valdegarde, who was delayed with a broken brake caliper, and bounces the Quattro through the ruts in a shower of spray and evil-smelling mud. Kankkunen too shows scant regard for the mud hole and is soon through and on his way. The second Toyota also slithers through the mud, leaving Tango Mud 3 nothing to do but to roll the tow rope up and get ready to move off. The plan was to wait until the two leading Nissans went past, radio their times through to Tango Air 1, Henry Liddon, and then make our way out of the section. Ambrosino was safely past, but the arrival of a local was the beginning of a dramatic 40 minutes. With his car firmly stuck and panic beginning to set in, he could hear Mike Kirkland arriving. There was bound to be trouble ahead. And sure enough, with nowhere to go other than to the left and try and force a way past, Mike Kirkland got stuck. Putting us in a somewhat embarrassing situation, we called Tango Air 1 for instructions. The Nissan crew were to be left to their fate. After all, all's fair in love and rallying. At the following village, the locals wait patiently for the arrival of the rest of the competitors, and a local tradesman with an eye to business does a roaring trade. At last, 45 minutes later, the next car appears. Not as expected Mike Kirkland, but an Audi chase car, crewed by two mechanics, and entered at number 11. Using its four-wheel drive ability, it squeezed past Kirkland, who is hotly pursued by the Toyota chase car, driven by Lars-Erik Torp, possible new recruit for Toyota in 1986. Service at Abengaroo in the early hours of the morning on the second leg, and a worried-looking Juha Kankkunen looks on as his service crew work against the clock to repair the ravages of the first few hundred kilometres of the rally. On the run into Abengaroo, he had had a rear tyre explode, causing an anxious moment or two. This, plus a service that took longer than expected, dropped him from equal first down to third. Teammate Valdegarde held the lead ahead of Mouton. Not wasting any time, Juha blasts out of the service halt for the time control and a welcome few hours rest. A few hours rest is what both the service crews and the crews of the mud cars could have done with, but it wasn't to be. Already in trouble are Tango Mud 3, who have slid off the track on an incredibly slippy downhill section. Working an appetite up for breakfast, we set about hacking away through to a stout tree so we can use the winch to pull us out. As you can see, it proved a difficult task.
Well, as you can see, we've had a slight problem this morning. It's 7 o'clock and we've been going all night, and we're just going on to our second mud location, our third mud location of the rally. And we came over this brow here and the road was just an absolute sea of mud, and even we got stuck, and as you've seen, Tony's had to use the winch to get us out. So we'll be radioing back to Henry in the aircraft a little while later to let him know about this hazard, because it certainly wasn't on the practice notes that the crews made a few weeks ago. Conditions have changed quite a lot since then. We're just going to go on now and have a look. Apparently there was a tree down about another 20 k's further on. We'll have a look at that, and if it's still down, we've got to hack a way through this sort of jungle to get the crews past. If not, I rather suspect we'll come back here just to keep an eye on this section.
Having determined that the fallen tree was clear of the track, we positioned ourselves at the point where we'd had our little disaster. Fortunately, the sun was now up and the track had dried a lot in the 2 hours since we'd been there. And obviously rally drivers are made of sterner stuff, as Valdegarde rocketed down the hill without any problems. Kankkunen too flew over the mud patch, and the two Toyota drivers were well ahead of the next car, Ambrosino's Nissan, which takes a slightly more sedate pace, but nevertheless makes it through okay. Behind him, Kirkland also gets past without any dramas. His main concern is to make up the deficit from the first leg. The main question, of course, was where was Mouton? The Audi Quattro should have been along by now. Even the lower seated crews were beginning to slide into sight. Soon, over the airwaves, came queries regarding the sudden non-appearance of the Quattro number 2. Even more suspicious, the Quattro chase car number 11 also failed to appear. As the minutes ticked away, the rumours grew that Michel's car, which had been losing time with a bad misfire, had been swapped for the chase car, which had been running perfectly, and in fact was holding 5th place. Despite denials by Audi team management, many people were convinced something not quite right had taken place. But the truth of what did happen in the early hours of the second day will probably never be fully explained. Suffice to say, Michel now held 5th place ahead of the also-rans, who count their penalties in tens of hours, but nevertheless keep plugging on. After a rest halt back in Yamoussoukro, crews headed north for a long, very tough section that was guaranteed to reduce the by now depleted field even more. Kankkunen had got past Valdegaard on the run back into Yamoussoukro and now held a 6-minute lead. Valdegaard's problems had been a damaged prop shaft, which required a lengthy service. Nevertheless, the two Toyotas were comfortably ahead of the two Nissans of Ambrosino and Kirkland. They had precautionary axle changes before the Yamoussoukro halt, but otherwise reported no major problems. Kirkland was a last-minute replacement for Shekhar Mehta, who had pulled out for family reasons, and Kirkland was therefore using borrowed pace notes and not totally au fait with them, and he dropped more time than perhaps he would have done normally. Michel Mouton in 5th place had not been without her share of misfortune either. Her usual co-driver Fabrizia Pons had to return home before the start with suspected malaria. Last-minute replacement Arne Hertz coping well, like Kirkland, with unfamiliar pace notes. To compound their misery, they had hit a train during practice, severely damaging the car and giving themselves cuts and bruises into the bargain. By now, Michel must be wondering whether her A seeding was really that important. At this control, Arne also seems to be having trouble convincing the marshal of the time he wants. The following morning, on the run back south from Kohogo, and Kankkunen still holds the lead, although by now Valdegaard has narrowed the gap and was only 2 minutes behind. Clearly the locals, who turn out in force to cheer everyone on, are delighted by the performance of the Toyotas. Ambrosino is pressing on after a gearbox change, but is not narrowing the gap, any more than Kirkland is, who had been plagued by electrical gremlins during the night. Michel, too, had a fraught night, with a car that was rapidly dropping apart around her. One of the hazards of rallying on the open roads in Africa is the other traffic. The last section before Yamoussoukro, and Kankkunen picks his way cautiously through the rocks and deep holes. Ahead of him, a major service where his gearbox, prop shaft and axle will be changed. Valdegaard is right behind him, and the mood in the Toyota camp is one of supreme confidence. After all, their nearest challenger, Ambrosino, is nearly 2 hours behind. Kirkland has been doing his best to modify his bodywork with some aggressive driving, which kept the Nissan service crew hard at work with the welding torch. Michelle has narrowed the gap during the day to Kirkland. It's now down to nearly 4 hours. She lies almost 6 hours behind rally leader Kankinen. At the service halt in Yamoussoukro, the strain shows as the sweat trickles down Juha's face. Temperatures are well over 100 degrees.
What can you say? Hot, bumpy, dusty. I love it.
Mechanics work furiously in the oppressive heat as the minutes tick away. Juha, you do realise that Bjorn has offered his service crew beers all round if they beat your service crew in changing the axle.
What?
He's going to buy his service crew beers all round if they beat your service crew changing the axle.
We promised to buy gin and tonic and small dinner if it's ready in time.
So you're confident you're going to win?
We will see. I think it's just coming over.
Despite their best efforts, it's Bjorn's car which pulls out first and heads for the time control. Juha is about to sacrifice a 1-minute lead for a 3-minute deficit. The reason for the longer service on Juha's car was because the gearbox, prop shaft and the axle had to be replaced when the prop shaft and axle had to come out as one unit. The entire service for both cars, incidentally, was done in only 20 minutes. Henry, you must be pleased with the team performance so far.
Fantastic at the moment. I think if you've just seen how the mechanics are working in this heat, it's unreal, isn't it?
Have there been any major problems to date or not?
No, what they've done here is routine maintenance. They've changed most of the major components halfway, and we hope we can have as good luck in the second half as we had in the first half.
Excellent, thanks Henry. The President Hotel Yamoussoukro, an oasis in a desert, at least offered teams the opportunity to relax by the pool, enjoy some decent food and snatch 12 hours welcome sleep. The next morning, the 12 surviving cars were to head south for the toughest leg so far, crossing the Bandama River en route for San Pedro, then the infamous Thai forest. Tango Mud 3 were at the southernmost point of the route, in the coconut plantations near the coast at Fresco. The only major item to report to Tango Air 1 was the amount of lorries the crews had to avoid on the narrow dirt roads. Rally or no rally, life still goes on for the locals. The two Toyotas continued to dominate, easing back a little as there is no threat from those behind. Ambrosino and Kirkland are making the best of it, but are realistic enough to know that their chances of improving are now long gone. Michelle's chances of gaining her A seed for 1986 are also quickly evaporating. Her car was rapidly falling apart, and this, coupled to recurring electrical problems, forced her out. Effectively, there was only 4 cars left in the rally. The remaining 3 runners by now were over 10 hours behind. For Mike Kirkland, it was fortunate that we followed him out of this section, as 20 kilometers further on, Tango Mud 3 had to get him going after he ran out of petrol. A broken fuel line in the boot of the Nissan meant that 20 kilometers further down the track, we had to repeat the performance, which we felt rather made up for leaving him in the mud hole on the first day.
Now.
Okay, thanks a hell of a lot. Okay, go.
At the service point at the end of the section, his car received the welcome attention of his mechanics, and we asked Mike what his rally had been like so far.
Well, it wasn't too bad until just now. Running out of petrol there in the middle of nowhere, no radio contact, and no way of getting any petrol. We were just really lucky you came along. Really fantastic.
So how much time did you lose in there?
It must have been about 42, 43 minutes, I think, something like that.
And you had bad luck on the first day, of course, didn't you?
Yeah, we got stuck in a mud hole. That wasn't bad luck. It was just one of those things that happens. Tried to get around a car that was also stuck in the mud hole. And we went left, stuck in the mud. Another 45 minutes. That's how this rally goes.
Toyota, meanwhile, was some 50 kilometers further on. During the run down towards San Pedro, the first part of the Thai Forest complex was originally scheduled. However, after Toyota mud crews went into the section, they reported it almost impassable, even to 4-wheel drive vehicles. The organisers wisely cancelled it. This meant more time for service, and Toyota took full advantage of it and did a precautionary clutch and gearbox change on Bjorn's car. Apart from this, both cars were running well, and spirits in the Toyota camp were high. Three o'clock in the morning, and Tango Mud 3 were having a slight problem. We had been sent ahead of the rally to check out the second Thai Forest section, 106 kilometers of the toughest roads you will find on any rally. A tree down across the track had to be dragged back by the winch, then sawn in two before we could clear the road sufficiently to get the rally cars through. In the early hours of the morning, on the final run back into Yamoussoukro, Mike Kirkland and Rob Coombs bring their Nissan home in 4th position. Their rally almost ended in the Thai Forest when they slipped off a wooden bridge and lost another 50 minutes. So they were well pleased just to make it home safely. Third place, held for much of the rally, went to Alain Ambrosino and Danielle Lasso. But the winners were Toyota, who had followed up their magnificent 1-2 on this year's safari with the same result in the Ivory Coast. In fact, they had even gone one better, as they managed for the first time in the history of the rally to bring both their cars to the finish ramp with equal points. Juha Kankkunen being declared the winner after beating Bjorn by 1 minute on a tie-deciding section earlier in the event. It had been a tremendous performance by the entire team, who must be sad to see Kankkunen leaving for Peugeot next season. But who knows, perhaps after 12 months' experience in a 4-wheel drive car, he will return to Toyota for 1987, when it is rumoured their new 4-wheel drive rally car will appear. We certainly hope so. Toyota without Kankkunen wouldn't be the same.